All right, welcome everybody to OU Insider. Tonight we have Weston Manders. He is also my friend. We both were RAs at the same time, so we have a lot of fun memories together. So he's just joining us. This is an event where we're featuring an alum that we're very interested in, and we want to just get to know about all of the career choices that you made, all of the choices that you made in college, and what led you to this moment here. So yes, Weston, will you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us what you majored in and when you graduated from Oglethorpe?
Yes, thank you for that wonderful introduction, my good friend Nicole. It should be said that Nicole was a much better RA than I was, but that's a different conversation.
Yeah, that's a different conversation.
My name is Weston Manders. I was a theater major at Oglethorpe, and I graduated early in 2012.
Well, very fancy. And I will just say for those who are not able to attend, we will have a recording made available. And for the attendees who have burning questions, we will answer them live. Just put them in the Q&A. So you can just ask him whatever you want. This is a very honest conversation. So he's just trying to give you the inside scoop about his, work life and his college life. So please go ahead and feel free to ask questions. But yeah, so Weston, just tell us a little bit about the things that you were involved in as a student here at Oglethorpe.
The first club fair thing at Oglethorpe, you know what I mean? When you can sign up for clubs.
Yeah.
In like fall semester, they have all the different clubs out there in the student center. At the time, it was the square one. What was it called? The student
Emerson, the bomb shelter.
Yeah. So it was in Emerson, and there were tables around the full perimeter of the square. So there were, I don't know, 50 different clubs. And I went around and I signed up for every club. And but I had already moved in a little early because by some miracle, John Aiken allowed me to walk onto the reserve soccer team. And I knew I was going to be a theater major, so I declared my major. And so right away, within the first few months, I was able to sort of fully immerse myself in a bunch of different activities at Oglethorpe. And I really do think that that's a unique kind of characteristic of Oglethorpe, that there were so many things to sort of get involved in, and it was manageable. Now, I didn't stay in all 50 clubs, but I did stay in a handful of them. And over the years, I was involved in SGA, and I did the fraternity stuff for a minute. And, I was an RA and played soccer for a little bit, sort of. And I was in the theater department and did, at least 4 productions a year, 4 main stage productions, plus some student productions, and was involved in improv groups that were started by students, and worked outside of campus. I worked for admissions office. I worked for special events. I was lifeguarding as well, and Oglethorpe allowed me to kind of do all that stuff all at once. And anytime you have a full plate, things are going to suffer. You might be spread too thin, but that was always my style. And I got to Oglethorpe and was just so stoked that there were so many ways to plug in, because while I was a theater major, I did enjoy being involved in athletics in a small way. And the fact that those two things really didn't distract from each other, and that I was kind of given the opportunity to do both, that really meant a lot right off the bat.
So what did you end up prioritizing, since you had a lot of clubs that you were signed up for? What ended up taking up most of your time and attention?
It was definitely the theater department. That was where I was spending, most of my classes were in the theater. Most of my classes were geared toward that. And, out even beyond my major requirements, the theater department was really good in my years of offering a lot of variety in the class selection. And, that was when we still had Georgia Shakespeare on campus. And so one of the huge benefits was the professional artists who were making their living in the arts world at Oglethorpe, and we bumped into them every single day on campus, and they taught our classes. I remember a class, I think it was called The Actor in Their Body, and it was taught by Carolyn Cook, and it was really just it was such a cool way to treat your, whatever physical form you have as an instrument to serve your craft of acting. And there are ways to hone it, ways to breathe better, ways to use your breath and your posture, to aid in your performance. And that was one of the last theater classes that I took, and one that stayed with me for a long time. But theater pretty easily took precedent, and beyond, like I said, the main stage shows, there were so many zealous student groups that kind of popped up. Rehearsal Room C and improv groups of various iterations that were, from 3 to 5 friends to, groups of 20 or more who were coming together for improv. And so I would say, just generally speaking, the theater department was my focus, and definitely the thing that I spent the most time on.
And was that your, so what was your goal as a college student? Was it to become a theater actor?
Yeah, that was the goal. That's why I came to Oglethorpe, specifically because it was situated in Atlanta, and because there were all these professional artists on campus, and beyond the Georgia Shakespeare connection that we once had, there were professional visiting artists who came in to direct in the department. There were artists who came in to teach, who worked outside in the city, and from what I know, the department still does that same thing. And I think that's a huge benefit to Oglethorpe, that it's really well connected in the city.
Mm-hmm.
And so in a career path, like a creative career path, like being an actor, the question is always like, how are you going to make a living? And so, for me at Oglethorpe, I just saw, so many people in the professional world in Atlanta, in the theater world, who were doing just that. They were making a living from their creative endeavors. And so my goal and my reason for choosing Oglethorpe was to become an actor in this city. And I've never really liked to be a little fish in a big pond. I like, I don't know what this says about me, but I do like a little bit of special attention maybe. And, Oglethorpe, I think, really gives that to its students because of the size. You're able to get these small class sizes. You're able to get this individual attention from a director in a department, because they're not having to deal with hundreds of theater majors at a time, and they can really start to focus on each person. So that was my experience. I know it might not be everybody's experience, but I can only speak tonight on what my experience was, and it was overwhelmingly positive, because everybody in the department and all the connections outside the city kind of kept pushing me to say, this is doable, because look at all these people who are doing it. And so, yeah, initially my goal was to act, but like, even when I focused on that particular path, I still was able to, work with Nooner, building sets and designing sets. And the first opportunity that I got right out of college is I worked for communications for a little while with Renee and them over there, and Todd and Debbie Aiken, and I got to shoot and edit video with them right as soon as I graduated, and now that's what I do full time. And so, I was able to kind of nurture these skills that I'm putting in place now, all the while focusing on my initial goal, which was to act.
Mm-hmm.
And I never really felt like I was sacrificing.
Good. And didn't you also work at Atlanta History Center?
That was after I graduated. Yeah, but so kind of how it went is when I graduated in 2012, I worked for communications for about a year after that. And I was starting to audition in town and started getting some of my first, paid professional gigs on stage and kind of in live performances around town. And so at the time I was doing what every artist does, which is hustle. I worked at an art gallery, Kylan Art, which was a huge influence on me because I was around all these visual artists all the time. And while it wasn't my medium, I've always been such a fanboy. Nicole knows this because I'm a fanboy of Nicole's work, but I love visual artists because it's so beyond what I do personally. And I really I flock to those folks, it seems, musicians as well. I've always had such a I prop them up, I guess. And so anyway, so right out of school, I was able to kind of get out into the world, work in creative spaces. In the History Center, Atlanta History Center at the time did this big hiring initiative where they hired all these actors in town, and did for the next, I don't know, 5 or so years, because they had all this first person interpretation at the History Center. So we were getting to portray real historical characters, and learn a lot. And that experience at the History Center as an actor there, really opened my eyes to a lot of historical context that I had kind of had the privilege, unfortunately, of kind of overlooking throughout my years. Even though I was always a lover of history, that place really opened my eyes to, historical injustices, because every day we were, portraying bus boycotts, and, we were talking about enslavement in the 1800s, and these were heavy issues, and we were doing it from a first person perspective. So we were looking at source material to inform our characters. And that was really cool because I was acting, but it was beyond just a character. I was trying to give life to a real person. And that's something that I really have really valued over the years.
And so I'm curious, when did you make that pivot and that change from pursuing a career in acting to film production, which you're doing now? Was that before grad school? And was it during this acting time for you?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm glad you said pivot, because that's what I always say, is that it doesn't feel like I, had this totally new about face in my career path, going from acting to filmmaking and video production. It feels like a pivot. It feels like it's a natural progression for me, because I know what it's like to be in front of a camera. I know what it's like to be on stage. And so I was able to kind of take some of that experience and turn it into working with actors, working with folks in front of the camera to help create a story, and to tell a story and create a video product. And it happened, and I'll just, this is the honesty hour, right? I had been auditioning, I had a film agent, and was getting very little work through that, but was getting some, did a little TV here and there, some short film stuff, and maybe a little print ad. I think I did a shoe catalog shoot that was supposed to go to print in Mexico. And who knows if that ever happened, but I definitely modeled some shoes for a day.
What?
Yeah, weird. That's what you do. So that was happening. I was auditioning for theater, and it was super hard. As everyone always tells you about acting, it's very difficult. And, they tell you, if you can think of doing anything else, do that instead. Because it is not for the faint-hearted. You have to go into these auditions, sometimes multiple in a day, and get told no over and over again, or more often get told nothing. And so that feeling of when you interact with someone briefly and then you leave and you're like, oh my God, what did they think of me? Did I say something stupid? Did I offend them? I mean, it's like that all the time. when you're auditioning, because you go in, you like put all this prep into an audition, you go in, pour your heart out, you know, really invest, you know, in the best case scenario, you really invest. And then you walk out and then you never hear from them again. All right, yeah, we'll be in touch. Yeah, that old funny, like, we'll have our people call your people. I mean, and then you never hear again. You know, very rarely have I gotten a call or a message that's like, you did not get the part, but thank you for coming out. I mean, that rarely happens. It's like you go in and then you just have to forget about it. So that grind is tough, and it's tough to go in and sit in a room with 20 plus people that look exactly like you. And so, you know, the reality is that stuff took a toll on me. And ultimately I decided that it wasn't worth it, because even like when I did extra work and stuff to kind of make, you know, as a part of the acting hustle, I was so fascinated with the video production and the film production side. I would find myself like gravitating toward those folks on set and paying attention to what those people were doing. And I was just fascinated with what it would look like as a filmmaker to go from an idea all the way to a finished product, you know, from conception to completion. You know, you get to have this artistic say, whereas when you're an actor, kind of the trade-off is that you show up and you do your part and you bounce, right? And you that's one of the benefits too, because you can plug in as a little piece of a bigger whole as an actor, and kind of just focus on your one thing. Whereas I feel like as a filmmaker, you know, I get to have my voice heard in several different ways on a project as a writer, a director, an editor. All those are ways to affect the artistic outcome of a product. And ultimately I decided that was what I wanted. That was where I wanted to put my effort.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that, you know, I was doing so well as an actor that I was just like, you know what, I'm going to hang it up while I'm on top. You know, that is not my story. And that is some people's story, but it's not mine, you know. But it really was a pivot, like you said, Nicole. It's like I said, I was cast in this small play at the time. This is like 2014 or 15 maybe. And I was not looking forward to doing the play. And so I quit the play, and I like got off of Facebook and like dropped my agent and applied to grad school all within the span of like a month or two. And I applied to grad school for video production. So all that kind of pivoting happened at once. And I'm known to make some rash decisions. And in this case, it has paid off in a big way, because I saw that people wanted video production, companies wanted video production. And because of my theater training, you know, I think I was able to approach clients and talk to clients and listen to clients and have this conversation and give them what they needed. And that has allowed me to make a living and work for myself. Am I off on a tangent again? Am I like
Totally on track. I just totally like, so for a lot of our students who are pursuing a creative career, like rejection is part of the process, and it really does wear on people. Some people can bounce back from it. Some people can really get motivated from it. You know, I was a visual art major, and I would, you know, apply for a bunch of shows. I would get turned down. I wouldn't hear anything. And I just love your story, because you really created and forged your own path without compromising or giving up your creative side. So I just really think that, you know, that's what it takes. Like, you still find something that you're passionate about and you make it work. But Mia is asking, where did you go for grad school?
So Mia and all the other listeners out there in TV land, I went to Georgia State for grad school. So, and actually, again, full transparency, I ended up getting paid to go to grad school. So it didn't cost me anything. You know, and at Oglethorpe, because I was an RA, because I was on a big partial scholarship, because of, you know, I auditioned for JEO, I auditioned for the Oglethorpe, for the theater scholarship. I worked in admission. You know, I told you I worked at the school a lot while I was a student. You know, I came out of Oglethorpe with, you know, a few $1,000s in debt, which is nothing compared to most folks. And, I credit Oglethorpe and all the opportunities they gave me for that to happen. And so I was able to go into grad school and make, it was only a few $100s a month or whatever, but, because I was I had an assistantship at the school, which is something that they offer in a lot of disciplines for their grad programs at Georgia State. They have a lot of opportunities for you to work for the school, to be a teaching assistant, to work in various capacities at the university, and essentially get another degree for free. And so that was a cool opportunity. And I had looked at SCAD and I had looked at Emory, which both have some graduate study in film. I think Emory does, if I remember correctly. Ultimately I ended up only applying to Georgia State after I sat down and interviewed with them over there, and after they told me about the assistantship opportunity.
So that is a school that Mia said that she is considering. And last night, in the Creative Careers panel, I don't know for those who were tuned in, or recommendations that the alums gave was that if you can come out of grad school without paying anything, I mean, especially when you're pursuing a creative career, where you're pursuing a job where the salary range is just, I mean, it's just,
there's so much discrepancy, and there's
right, exactly. So like, I think it is a smart decision for you to go to the most cost-effective grad school program. And yes, Mia, you can connect with Weston after this. I will just answer on his behalf. But yeah, great. So from tell us, kind of talk us through like what happened after you graduated from Georgia State's grad program.
Yeah, so backing up a little bit, when I applied to grad school, I applied because I didn't really know that much about equipment and gear. And I was like, I had all these ideas for short films and for sketches, and I didn't really know a lot about the gear. And I'm not a good researcher. I don't do 5-star reviews and stuff. Like when I get my Amazon packages, I don't write the review. And I don't read the reviews either. So I'm not a very well-educated consumer. So I need a structure if I'm going to learn something. And there have to be consequences for me not going to something, or I just won't do it. So I had to put myself back in an environment where there was structure. And that's why I was like, okay, well, I need to figure out what kind of gear to rent. If I'm going to start shooting my own stuff, I need to find other people who I don't have to pay, who I can work with, because I don't have any money. And so now we had all these students who are on the same deadlines that I was. And we had all these class projects in the film department. And a lot of my classes were with undergrads, but now we had all the same deadlines. And so we could take the parameters of the assignment and now work within these parameters to get creative. And I did act in a lot of those early projects, and being in front of the camera, or being willing to, just to be outgoing, I guess, or to speak publicly, is something that not a lot of folks want to do. And it's something that not a lot of us do well. And, I have so much respect for people who act on camera, because it's a totally different ballgame. I got lost there. Where am I?
I think we were just talking about your grad school experience and then where it took you afterwards.
Yeah, so I got to grad school because I was looking to I mean, literally just to learn so much more that I needed to bridge the gap, from what I knew as an actor to what I wanted to know as a filmmaker. And Georgia State, even though it's a massive institution, the film department is pretty small. And, just like anything, you're going to get out of it what you put in. So there were plenty of slack ass kids who didn't care and didn't really get a lot out of the program, but they have a lot of access to professional gear. They're pretty well connected in the city. There were a lot of opportunities to shoot and get paid outside of just the school, because of connections that I made, because the teachers and the staff are plugged into the professional community as well in Atlanta. I'll speak specifically Lee Bolia, Matt Rolls, Dr. Lewis, Nick Vollmer. These are folks who who I worked with really closely, and who taught me. I mean, so Ben Weisenhunt, these are people from Georgia State that really taught me a lot, who I really value. And so what that allowed me to do was start to hustle these gigs while I was still in grad school. I can identify a company, like the Atlanta History Center, for instance, was a company that was one of the first people to hire me, to shoot video for them because they knew me in a different capacity. And I had reached out and said, I'm shooting video now, shooting and editing, what can I do for you? And was finding small ways to plug in. And right now, I just stepped off a set with them this morning, and and the set that I stepped off of this morning is a much more involved project than I was doing 5 years ago, than I was doing 3 years ago for that same client. So they've seen me grow, and I would encourage you to, in any field, or any creative space, I guess, to identify the people that are already in your sphere, who already know you and trust you, and see ways you can plug in to something they may need, and provide them with a creative service that's going to benefit them and make it useful for them. And then now you have a product. You can say, okay, I went to my friend Nicole. She needed a video, or she could use a video. I made this video for her, and now I can use this as collateral to reach out to other artists who may need promotional content, right? And now, you start to build this resume, you start to build this body of work, and it's all about consistency, and it's all about, putting your own voice in it. And the more work you do, the faster you're going to get to that clear voice.
Yeah. So you now own and run a Loud South Productions.
That's right.
First of all, how did that name come about? Loud South.
So Loud South is just the natural culmination of my life path. It's I grew up in South Georgia, down almost to Florida. The town is called Blackshear, and I had the privilege growing up there as a white guy that I enjoyed growing up in this Mayberry-like place. And obviously it's not that kind to everyone. But I grew up in that swampy South Georgia area, and I always loved the storytelling and the folklore and the like sweaty texture of it all. And some of my earliest memories are at the Okefenokee Swamp with my grandpa, like literally stepping over alligators. And so that's the stuff that I always loved about the South. I've never really liked the jacked up truck thing. I'm sorry if you guys have jacked up trucks. What I gravitated toward was this unique, weird strangeness that was so uniquely Southern. And that was the South that I knew and gravitated towards. And so when I was looking at what do I want to do as a filmmaker, what is my unique voice? Well, I've always felt that I could add, some honesty and some complexity to a Southern voice, and I can help other people be heard as Southerners. And there's so many people in the South. It's such a weird and diverse and complex place, and it's not always seen that way. And so to me, I knew for sure the one thing the South never was quiet. And so it kind of it just kind of naturally got to this place where I was like, the loud South is what I want to show. It's not the old South for sure. It's not the new South. It's not the city too busy to hate, as they said in Atlanta. But for me, it was always this loud South that we will have these voices, and we will be heard. And for me personally, and with my company, what that means is that I'm a more is more guy. I'm not a more is less guy. We're gonna get out there, we're gonna make something, we're gonna make a mess of it, and we're gonna learn from that experience and move forward. So, I'm trying to equally pursue fully creative endeavors, short films and projects like that, and simultaneously, pursue corporate video and commercial work, which is, a way to put food on the table.
Yeah, so can you tell us about maybe some of the highlights of owning your own business and maybe some standout projects that you've worked on?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the best thing about owning your own business is that you don't work for anybody else. I mean, and I can talk about the drawbacks as well. The
Yes.
biggest drawback
Okay.
is health insurance, but the positives are, for me, were obviously, it was overwhelming amount of positives that led me here, because I wanted to be accountable to me, and I wanted to be the direct contact with the client. I didn't want there to be this middleman. I'd worked for other production companies for short times that were doing sort of the same corporate video, and I found myself with this strong urge to just speak directly to the client. I know that if I could talk to them and interact with them, that I could have a clear vision of what this edit needs to look like, or what this shot needs to look like. And so that led me to get to a place, where I was able to really pursue and hustle my own client base. Oglethorpe has been great about hiring me for different projects. The History Center's been a huge client. But then, last year I was in Las Vegas with a dental implant company almost every month for a year, so and that's something I never would have expected. And so, that's something I was able to do because I'm self-employed, because I was willing to take some risks, because I was willing to get out there and get my hands dirty. Because my advice, and this is not for everybody, but this is my advice, is you got to just start doing the thing, and you got to break a bunch of eggs and make the omelet, or whatever that saying is. And because I was never going to learn from a distance. I was always going to be a hands-on learner. And again, that's not everybody's learning style, but for those of you who learn like I do and did, you just got to start shooting and editing and screwing it up and turning it in late and apologizing to clients and realizing that sucks. And it's much better, and you have much more peace of mind if you turn it in on time, and you have a much better likelihood of getting a returning client if you put forth an extra amount of effort than they expected. And so, and because I'm self-employed, all that extra energy that I invest, I see a return on that investment, because those clients can tell when you went the extra mile and when you came up short and, halfway did it. And so,
Yeah. So what's the flip side of it then? What's the challenge of being self-employed and running your own business?
I mean, you're giving up benefits right away. I mean, that's the biggest thing. But I don't know, man. I mean, I know this is petty, but in the past few months, we've seen all these people with all these very secure jobs, with all these benefits, all this security and consistency of a salary job this year, lose it and be cut down to 50%, and then lose 10% on top of that, and be furloughed indefinitely. And those are the people who chose a stable career path. And, I don't relish in that, but the point is that to some extent, there's nothing guaranteed in the world. And so you do have to take a certain amount of risk, and you do have to be ready to be scrappy. And I guess I can't speak to every discipline, but I can speak to this path that I took, which is filmmaking and video production. My advice and my style of doing it is be ready to be scrappy, and be ready that, you may have to figure out an alternative healthcare plan. You may have to pay the full price at the emergency room if you fall off a motorcycle, which happened to me. And so, which it only really cost me like $800. Now that's a lot of money, but it is cheaper than health insurance. But, these are the realities, right? This is the stuff that I'm sacrificing in the short term, right? And I'm sure Oglethorpe they're cringing at this lack of.
Right. But I mean, it does seem like you are your own HR department. You are doing all the administration. You're doing everything from the front to back. How has that been? Is it still worth it for you to be doing all of that work?
Yeah, I mean, the more jobs that I do, the less I have to subcontract or outsource, so the more money I keep. But there gets to be a point where it doesn't make any sense anymore. I can't do every job in the best way.
Mhm.
There's billing and payments and stuff, and all these contracts that need to be in place, and I can do a certain amount of that, but to some extent, you're gonna have to realize your own limitations, and then bring somebody else on to help you, or a list. There's plenty of services. Get QuickBooks, and start to do it that way, and make sure you're keeping up with all your tax stuff. And so there's plenty of services out there, and there's plenty of people to help you. And Oglethorpe, for real, I mean, there's plenty of alums who are willing to help, with advice, or with services, or to point you in the right direction. But because I'm running the business from start to finish, and it's just a one man show over here, I gotta realize that I do have limitations at some point. And
Mhm.
if I want to grow, I'm gonna have to put somebody else in place.
Mhm.
There's some other cliche type saying that's, what is it, like, if you want to go it quick, go alone, and if you want to go far, go together. And so, that's fine if I want to keep kind of sacrificing quality or sacrificing efficiency of the business admin side of things. If I just keep doing it, that's fine. But I'm at a point right now, or in the past few months, where there's enough stuff coming in, enough work coming in, and enough paperwork that needs to be done, where I needed help. And so there's plenty of ways to pull folks in, and plenty of people who do that stuff for a living and are looking to be contracted and freelance, just like I was, and just like you are.
That's great. Um, it's part of growing pains too. So Aaron asks, what does 5 to 10 years down the road look like for you? Maybe for Loud South or for you yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've always said that I have to hit it on two fronts. If I'm just trying to put food on the table, then I should have just been an accountant. You know, I have to, even though I'm pursuing corporate work, and I'm trying to make a living in that sphere, if I'm not putting an equal amount of effort into creative projects, then I've missed the mark.
Mhm, mhm.
And it's going to sway one way, it's going to sway the other way often. And you only have so much energy to allocate, and so it's always going to be a balance. But 10 years down the road, I've got a feature film at Sundance, and I've got a Nike commercial, and those two things don't have to exist separately to me. you know I also am willing to sell out a little bit, and some artists aren't, and that's wise. Um, and let me just speak on this really quickly. I heard a professor at Georgia State tell me not to get a day job in my field, and I think that's terrible advice because he had a day job teaching in his field. So anyway, I think he was a huge hypocrite, and I hope he sees this. But you know, th- I say you have to hustle in whatever unique way is yours, and sometimes that means a day job in your field, and so you can hone the skills on the clock that you're going to use, fully in your own creative space. The stuff that I learned about camera and shot construction and editing on the corporate side, I was able to use those skills and tweak those skills and expand those skills for my own creative projects. And so I would say for me, it's always going to be about balancing those two aspects of my life. Now, in the same way that, like I said, if I just wanted to put food on the table, my only goal was to make money, I would have done a different thing. My goal is not in 10 years to make X amount of dollars, because just like, again, like we saw this year, all that stuff can be ripped out from under you. But that doesn't mean that I don't want to push myself professionally, because I do. And because it's not just about making X amount of dollars, it's about, now what can I do with that money? Can I invest it back into my own
Mhm.
projects? can I make my life a little bit more comfortable and a little bit easier so that I allow myself the mental space to focus on other aspects of my life, my relationships, my family. You know, these things are important to me and to a lot of us as well. And I think that it's important to nurture those things. And so, you know, 5 or 10 years down the road, again, it's also about how full is my life overall, right? And just because I get a Nike commercial doesn't mean I can hang the hat up. And just because my feature premieres at Sundance on Saturday night, you know, doesn't mean I can hang the hat up. And it doesn't mean that I'm a good family member or a good son or a good boyfriend or whatever. And so, you know, as creatives, I think it's so easy to get sucked into what we do as our worth. And it's more than that.
Yeah, I think for creative people, the work is always in progress. No matter how successful you've become, no matter how much you feel like you failed, the work is always in progress. And I think that's the exciting part of being a creative type. So we're almost to the end, nearing our time. But I did want to know, Weston, what inspires you creatively? What inspires your creativity? So like, what helps you keep that part of yourself alive? Like when you're doing a lot of like work that is very corporate, when do you feel, or what makes you feel inspired to do creative things for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, you only have so much energy. So if you are on set all day, you're shooting for 12 hours, you're standing in one place or, you know, moving around on your feet all day for 12 hours. It's unlikely that you're going to be able to come home and spend another 8 hours editing on your passion project short film piece. So, you know, you have to find ways to recharge, and like, just because you're busy doesn't mean you're productive. That's a lesson I had to teach myself, that the world and God and the universe taught me, is that just because I had a lot of stuff on the calendar doesn't mean I'm productive. And so, you know, you gotta watch movies. I know that's like obvious, but like it seems obvious. You know, like if you're a musician, you should listen to music all the time. If you're a visual artist, you should be looking at the greats. You should be going to the museum. And Nicole, I actually think you're so good at that. Like, I feel like you're always at the museum, or like when you went to the folk art installation site the other day. You know, I feel like it's so obvious. Like, if I want to shoot all this beautiful natural light stuff, I need to watch Terrence Malick and from start to everything he's ever done. And you know, like if I want to shoot stuff it's set in a city, there's a high chance I probably should spend some time with Spike Lee. And you know, these things seem obvious, I think, but like we might dismiss them. Um, but when you watch a new movie or an old movie, or you sit down with a film that's new to you, analyze it, you know, but also at the same time allow yourself to get lost in it, you know. And I also think Instagram is so great for that. Like, there's just so much crazy stuff out there. I think like print fashion is like one of the things that I never really knew anything about. But I'm like looking at all these print fashion ads and all these like crazy poses and people with animals and crazy fashion, and that's something that like gets my mind going, like, oh, how could I use something like this? How could I make this loud and southern for my own piece? And I have all these crazy things saved in my Instagram account, and that are like visually stimulating, interesting visuals. And so, you know, those are things that feed me creatively. You know, you know, I've been trying to spend actual time in silence as well, as much as my life as a kid and as a college student was spent yelling and running around and hollering. You know, I think in my old age, I've realized that like
You're not old, but yes, go ahead.
I feel okay in the silence, which is something I mean, I've had to grow into that. And you know, that allows my mind the space to allow, you know, a creative spark to grow into something bigger.
Yeah, a lot of these are just exercises that you just need to really have for yourself. And I just love that you've been able to stay so self-motivated, through college all the way to this point, and as you continue on. And, we're really excited for where you're headed next, always. Do you have any last nuggets of wisdom for our students or parting words?
So yeah, really quickly, like my message to the world is like, get out there and make a mess. That's the quick one. Like, don't wait till you can do it perfectly or you'll keep waiting. That's my thought. The other thing is like, to your point, yeah, like, sure, like I do give myself some credit for like staying the course and all this stuff, but and I'm getting a little choked up thinking about it, but like, I mean, I didn't do any of this alone, and my connections, not even like at Oglethorpe for the there was so much staff and so many professors and administration that helped me. And again, I know that's not everyone's experience right now. And I hate that. But it was mine, and I was really fortunate in that. But just the people that I met in that school, the people that I met at Georgia State, and the people that I met in the city have put me on and given me opportunities to make that mess. And if I've been forgiven for so much of the mistakes that I've been made as an artist and as a professional. And I grew because of them, and I think I don't like the self-made man, person, woman image, or that term, the self-made person. I don't think that that's real. I don't believe that. Like, I did it on my own kind of thing. Like, I just don't think that's just not true. Like, even if you did a lot for yourself, it's important to give yourself credit, but like, you don't exist in a vacuum. And the minute that you start, I'll speak for me. The minute that I start thinking that I did it, I'm going to get humbled pretty quickly. So, yeah, I mean, I'm excited. This is an exciting time to fit you. We have so many parameters and so much work to do as a society to each other and creatively. But it's exciting to know that like, we're not doing it alone.
Absolutely. Yeah. Weston, thank you so much for sharing with us, your career journey, where you're headed next, your nuggets of wisdom. Our students really enjoyed speaking with you and hearing you talk. And again, this recording will be made available. And Weston, how can students connect with you?
They can't.
No, he is on Instagram. Loud South is on Instagram. I will say that. So
yeah, loudsouthproductions.com.
Yeah.
loudsouthproductions.com.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. We've